I think if I hear you call me Becky one more time, six-pack, I'm gonna pop your tops. All six of them.
Who are you?
Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. And this is a big thanks to Lucas, who sent in a very generous request, paid request. Thank you so much for that. If anyone wants to request any other type of reviews or topics, reactions, re-reviews, lists, pretty much any type of video, you can send a request either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And for this, probably be maybe Christmas Eve that I upload this, is for the first season of the 2003 Ninja Turtles cartoon. Now this is of course not an official Blu-ray set because there's never been one, and there never will be because Nickelodeon are assholes. Someone else made this online, I bought it, and it works perfectly. It works fantastic. It has all the seasons, including Back to the Sewers, and it has Turtles Forever, and even some special features. So it's the whole set, and it looks great, it plays great, it sounds great, and it is great. So since Nickelodeon won't do it, someone else did it, and it was a good deal as well. So before I get into the first season, and this will be a long video, so be warned, to tell a little bit about my backstory on the Ninja Turtles. That's why my username has Raph in the title, which stands for Raphael, which is this character here. So Rambo Raph. Although some people say it's Ralph, but it's not Ralph, it's Raph. I grew up with the 80s Ninja Turtles cartoons. 6, 7 years old, I'm watching it every CBS Saturday morning. And grew up with the original Nintendo game, which I did not hate. I actually liked the game. I remember playing in the arcade machine the first arcade TMNT game. Watched the first 2 live action films when they came on VHS. Well, technically all 3 of them, but I enjoyed the first 2. The toys, merchandise, pillows, pretty much anything you think of Ninja Turtles I was part of. Being a big fan. And I think a lot of people, it dwindled just because you're growing up, times change, you still like them, but then everything else comes into play, and sometimes that happens. You just stop thinking about something. And then it wasn't until I want to say 2000, maybe 2001, it was somewhere around there, got a computer, family desktop computer, and finally an internet very late in the game. And I forget how it led into me thinking of the Ninja Turtles again, but I just looked stuff up and I would find random stuff. I would find, for example, this thing called fan fiction. I'm like, what the hell is fan fiction? And a lot of them were bad, because it was like a girl going, they're my boyfriend, or someone going, I'm someone and I was going around, and then I was in an alleyway, and then I found the turtles, and then we were best friends. And if you write those at school, you're a better writer than me. I'm just saying that's at first where I find them, okay, but then I would find other ones where they really went in depth into the personalities of the turtles, the characteristics of the turtles, the being very dramatic in their stories. I thought, wow, I never thought of it that way, but why not? Why couldn't you do it? It makes sense. And like there was this one story called Five, where the what if story was, what if there were 5 of them and one of them turned bad and was gunned down in front of like Raphael, and that's why Raphael grew up so pissed, because he saw one of his own gunned down. And then that character comes back, and at the end of the story it tried to kill one of his brothers, so Raphael puts a fucking sai right up his neck, the guy's neck. It's too dangerous. Try to kill one of his own. And the guy was too far gone. I'm like, okay. I mean, stuff like that. I'm like, oh, you read stuff, I'm like, okay, wow, you two really do a lot more with this. Interesting. And so that really got me into learn more about the original comic books, which were much darker, and all this other stuff. And until ultimately, I just started hearing and reading on the internet there's a new show. I'm like, there's a new show? And I would see clips. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And then back to the day of VCRs. For those who don't remember VCRs, there's these big things. You put the VHS tape in. Well, this is what you grab it. Not freaking fall. One of these things. Put it in. In these kind of cases. Don't fall. Or it'll be funny fall on me, maybe it'll be a meme. But you had a blank VHS tape. I was away at work. Come back. I watch it. It's taped. And I was blown away. I was blown away by the direction they took with this show. That it was going to be still a kid's show. There's still a lot of silly moments and goofy moments. It is still a kid's cartoon. But it's a direction where they went darker. They went a bit more serious. I'm sorry, I do think the writing in this show is better than the 80s Turtles cartoon. I'm sorry. I've seen every single 80s cartoon episode. I grew up watching that show. I still like the show. But in my personal opinion, I do think this is a better show in almost every way. Except the music. I will say the big flaw in the show, the music sucks. The theme song sucks. Because at times the animation is very nicely done and dark and at times beautiful. And at times it's trying to be, it's well done action, it's trying to be a bit more serious. Well, there's still humor and levity. But the cartoon aspect you definitely get reminded of because of the music. The music just becomes very goofy and big and dun dun dun. It's like, I wish the score, the music, and the theme were better. To me, that's the biggest detriment to the show. To me, in my opinion. But what I enjoyed was they had actual story arcs, where there'd be stories that lasted 3 episodes or 4 episodes. Later on, sometimes 5 episodes. So it'd be like, part 1, here's part 2, here's part 3, here's part 4. There'd be times where something's referenced early on, and it follows through. Like one of the things is Baxter Stockman, who's a character in this. Throughout the show, each time something screws up, Stockman is taken away, and the next episode we see him, he's losing an eye, or he lost an arm. Like, you watch the progression of the show, he goes from a regular person to a fucking brain in a jar. Not in this season, but later on, like, by the end, he's a brain in a fucking jar. That's how more parts get taken away from him. Or when you watch the show, it seems like an actual gradual progression of a story that they did not do a lot in the old days of the cartoons. Nowadays, that's the norm. Like if you watch Batman the anime series, you watch, various other shows, cartoons. You go through a season and there's this overarching story and things connect. Again, nowadays it's typical, but that wasn't the case in the days of the original 80s cartoon. It's just, here's a standalone and they're fighting an arcade machine, or there's a standalone and here's this guy who plays his piano and da-da-da-da, or there's the killer pizzas and all that shit. And no, I don't hate the original show, but as an older person, I gravitate towards this because I do think it's better written. I think it has a more consistent story because it's a story that flows through and does connect. And the action, I think the Turtles are able to do more. They're able to use their weapons more. There are times that people forget Michelangelo in the 80s cartoon after a while didn't use nunchucks because the nunchucks were deemed, when people get mad at me, they don't get mad at me, but like Secret of the Ooze, one of the things people talk about Secret of the Ooze is they don't use the weapons. But people give the 80s cartoon a pass because like Mikey doesn't use his weapons. The nunchucks disappear because most of that show, after the first season or so, he uses the grappling hook. People forget that. Here they use their weapons. They're fighting regular foot. That's another thing when people complain about, well, the Shredder here is this alien. Well, on the flip side, the 80s cartoon, the Foot are robots, not people. So you're okay with the Foot being robots when usually any other time they're people, but you're okay with one but not the other. I don't know, I'm okay with both. Because the Foot still seem like the Foot and Shredder still seems like the Shredder, at least to me. Unlike fucking Michael Bay's Megatron wannabe Shredder. But again, when I go through the show and the animation is very nicely done, it's able to add more to be its own thing. It doesn't need to copy and paste constant things from the 80s cartoon. It still at times referenced the original comic books, which was nice and refreshing and different. But it was also its own thing. And like, you looked at certain characters, I definitely think that the backstory of Splinter is done better here than the 80s cartoon. Why do you keep saying the 80s cartoon? Because the show keeps getting fucking buried and put in the ground and forgotten. I'm sorry, when I looked and this is the last time I'm going to say I like the 80s cartoon. So people, oh, you hate it. Yeah, this is the kid that every week, Saturday morning, I would watch the cartoon and, bought all the DVDs over there. including the overpriced ones where they separated one season to 4 fucking packages. They had to put a stupid fucking action figure in there. This is back in the day when the internet was fairly new. One of the first things I did when I got the internet is bought VHS tapes that someone had taped of all the 80s cartoon TMNT episodes. But when I look at this, I think Casey Jones is better in this. In the 80s cartoon, he appeared like 4 times and tried to sound like Clint Eastwood. Here, he's an actual character, Casey Jones. The backstory, because the 80s cartoon, because of the time it was made, they couldn't do anything that harsh or dark. So the backstory was Splinter couldn't bow because Shredder hit this thing, so he couldn't bow, and thus he was kicked out. There's a lot more to the backstory of this, which is in the 1990 movie and the original comic books. And that's because Peter Laird, one of the creators of the comics, was a big part of this. Peter Laird shepherded this, especially the first season. And again, I'll say I think the 80s cartoon did a better job on the music. And voice-wise, I do like the voice actors in this. I think the voices of the Turtles fit their roles. A lot of people said they find Mighty irritating and annoying. I like him. I think he's trying to be a little bit like Robbie Wrist, but Robbie Wrist does it better in the live-action movies. Raph is more of the New Yorker, like he was in the first live-action movie. I appreciate that. And these guys don't seem pointless. They don't seem worthless. The 2012 cartoon, 2012 I learned, I didn't mind the first season or two, but one of the things that got annoyed going on is that some of the characters, especially Raphael, seemed so fucking pointless later on in that show that if they fucking died, nothing would have changed. And then April got fucking superpowers, and then they say, oh, is April and Donnie, will they be a thing? Will they not be a thing? Pick a fucking lane and run with it. And they didn't. And by the end of the show, they didn't fucking do it. So they said, why the fuck did you bring it up in the first place if you weren't going to do anything, one or the other do it? It just makes April to be a fucking gigantic cock tease in the 2012 cartoon. So one reason I don't like the bitch. She's a fucking cock tease. Put that Donatello on a fucking leash through multiple seasons and didn't get anything, not even a fucking simple blowjob in return. So again, April in 2012 is a fucking cock tease and it has superpowers. But this show, like I said, I like the voice actors. I wish there was a documentary on the making of the show, but we can't have that. When they did a fucking Ninja Turtle documentary called Turtle Power, the definitive history, that wasn't even fucking mentioned. It only lasts for like 7 fucking seasons, give or take. But I mean, not even gonna fucking mention it. We won't save it for the sequel. Well, it's been 6 years. Yeah, I'm sure that sequel's going well after 6 fucking. Maybe when I'm 50. No, it's like 17 minutes in. Let me get to the actual first season, and I'll go more into my liking of the show. When the first episode, things changed. I went, wow, this is actually pretty neat. I love the animation. I love the dark shadows. It really captures that these characters are ninjas. Hence the fucking title, Ninja Turtles. Again, the theme song sucks. I'll give you that. But, you know, the way it's animated, at times, it's almost, once in a while, in certain parts, it's like almost an anime, not look, doesn't look anime, but almost like someone had that in mind. The way certain things are, it's just, like there's a point where Leo is running on the walls, and you see like him going on the walls, and the way the camera is situated. Later on, when the foot are throwing ninja stars, and there's this close-up shot of the stars, the ninja stars on the door, and Donnie and Mighty are around the door, and you have these up-close shots but it's like down here to really give a certain scope to it. In the first episode, they gotta deal with these mousers that break into the lair. And right off the bat, like, it starts out with action. My favorite character is Raphael. This show treats him like a badass in fights. Not a fucking pansy ass like later on in the 2012 cartoon. I like Raphael in the 80s cartoon, but that's not the Raph I prefer. Again, I like Raphael in the 80s cartoon, but do I prefer a New Yorker type that's kicking ass and punching people in the face? Or do I prefer Raphael that dons a musketeer and goes to a volcano because he thinks he's going to die? I prefer this Raphael. I like 80s Raphael. I prefer this Raphael. Another thing that I enjoyed when I was watching my first run in the show, there's a lot of instances throughout all the seasons where Mighty and Raph have this back and forth rapport. You have the gruff brother and you have the joyful, annoying baby brother. And I would compare it to other TV shows. For example, The A-Team, another show I grew up with. You had one character, the rough and tumble guy, Mr. T, and you had, B.A. Baracus, and then you had the energetic, more annoying guy, at least to him, to Mr. T or here Raph, Dwight Schultz, Murdoch's character. And you would see that in other movies too. I mean, movies like, I could see, if Raphael was Will Smith, Mighty would be Martin Lawrence. Again, that sort of back and forth, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed their approach to that. There's a lot of moments about this show. And the first season, the first episode, Mighty's trying to get into a huddle to listen, and Raph keeps pushing him off. And then he does it again. There's a point at the end of the first episode where he's about to ready to say Cowabunga, and Raph just pushes him down a hole. Not funny. Oh, yeah, it is. Or when Raph's trapped in a van and Mighty's like, oh, I can't hear you. Oh, I can't hear you. And just purposely trying to piss him off. I appreciate that dynamic to the point I wish I could see that in a movie. Like, very... In particular, that dynamic would be very fulfilling to me as a fan to see that really work in a live action motion picture. And then the second episode, A Better Mousetrap, where you get more into this Mouser storyline and Baxter Stockman, who is black. Why? Because he was black in the comic book. And I don't know why in the 80s cartoon they changed him to white. He was black in the comics, but again, because for a reason I don't know, they decided Baxter Stockman should be white in the 80s cartoon. Again, I don't know why. They just did it, and that's it. And Baxter Stockman, I don't mind. He reminds me of an evil Joel Morton from Terminator 2. Like if Miles Dyson from T2 was evil and became a scientist for some... Like, that's the thing. If I ever thought of who would I want as Baxter Stockman for a movie, I would say like Joel Morton. Because that's what he reminds me of. In a good way. And you still have, the Turtles... You still have silly, goofy stuff. You still have these outrageous machinations. Like they have the sewer slider that goes through the sewers. They have a battle shell that they make later on, which is like a turtle van. Because, Donnie's a genius. He can do whatever. That's the second episode. They meet April. And April is still a strong character, but they didn't need her to give her fucking superpowers like in the next fucking the 2012 show. She'd have the fucking superpower shit. And it was like Megan Fox where she was the star of the fucking show. No, the Turtles are the stars. They're the stars of this fucking show. It didn't become the April O'Neil show like the Michael Bay produced movies did. And Casey Jones was Casey Jones, not some fucking cop with short ass hair, shorter than me, and I'm bald. With some stupid fucking mask. Here, Casey Jones seems like Casey fucking Jones. And these are characters we do meet in this first season. And in the animation's nice. Like when the second episode when Raphael throws his ninja star and it goes right through the top of this mouser's head. The third episode, Attacking the Mousers. There's some fun levity throughout most of the show. Splinter, I like Splinter in this. Like Splinter in the 2012 cartoon seemed like a fucking dickhead a lot of the time. Here I thought he was stern, but he was still very loving. And there's also fun levity to the character. You know, this is the first time I ever thought of Splinter watching fucking soap operas, which sometimes he does. They kind of ran with that in other incarnations of the Turtles. Or there'd be times early on where he's trying to work the communicator and he can't quite do it. Like your grandfather trying to work a computer. It's like, hello, a stupid device. So they give an actual character, personality. Holy shit. You know? It's crazy, right? Or in the third episode, Attack of the Mousers, April keeps fainting till she keeps seeing the turtles, and Raphael goes, I'll snap her out of it. And you just hear Splinter go, Raphael, no! And like the characters are just talking to each other without just dialogue that has to advance the plot. We need dialogue that advances the plot. No, you can have stuff that actually culminates is the wrong word I'm looking for. That actually builds up the characters. Like Mikey fucking around and Raph going, you keep talking like that, she don't pass out again. Or when Mikey does something and Raph goes to April, first rule, ignore Mikey. Believe me, you'll be better for it. But there's heart throughout a lot of these episodes. Nice little moments. Will be dialogue moments, like when they think they're gonna die, and Raph goes, hey, it's been fun, guys. And Mikey's like, even me, Raph? And Raph's like, yeah, especially you. Or later on when Leo gets thrown to a fucking window, which was in the original comics, and then in the 1990 movie they changed it to Raphael. And then in the 2 episodes later, when they're hanging out in the farmhouse, actually no, 3 episodes later, when Leo's recovering, while Mikey and Donnie are doing their story, Raph is just helping Leo fix his swords. The little moments where he gives it to Leo when he drops something, Leo smiles. No dialogue, it just, wow, that actually, without dialogue, is developing the characters. Show a little bit of heart on some of these characters. That's nice. And you still have the action, and you know, still have, you know, the 20-minute running time where it's still, you know, fun, goofy humor for the kids. But I didn't notice any fucking fart jokes. There's maybe like one burp joke, which whatever. The 4th episode, Meet Casey Jones, one of my favorites, which is a take off the original Raphael micro series comic book back in the day. And I give credit for them keeping this part of the comic in the show, because it's a very dark moment when you don't even have to think about it. Mikey's messing with Raph during sparring. Raph loses it. He picks up a fucking pipe and he's ready to cave his own brother's head in. Leo stops it, even screams like, "What are you doing? You crazy?" And Raph immediately steps out of it. He runs off. And the fact like they show him like Mikey's ready to go after him and Splinter stops him. And Raph's like, "What's wrong with me?" I'm like, wow. Why is it that I did more of a fucking cartoon than 2 live-action $100 million piece Michael Bay produced movies? Did someone answer me that? Can someone answer me that question? Those are people that write and get paid for it, direct, get paid for it. Why is that the case, huh? I love someone to tell me that. It's ridiculous in my opinion. Fucking ridiculous. And that's the episode where he meets Casey Jones. I thought the voice actor they picked for Casey Jones, they got the design of him perfectly. Yeah, there's no pictures of him in that, but he looks like Casey Jones, he acts like Casey Jones. They actually show a rapport between him and Raph, which they didn't even do that in the 2012 cartoon. Just like they forget about it. Oh shit, yeah, they're friends. And then they forget about it for all this time. Oh yeah, it's like, it's not as consistent as people make it out to be, in my opinion. That 2012 cartoon. Again, the first 2 seasons of that show I could deal with. After that, not really. And there's even a nice moment where Raphael comes home and he apologizes. And of course, Mikey, being the type of guy he is, forgives Raph. Like, that seemed very sincere and nice. But you still have that nice rapport between Raph and Casey throughout certain episodes. And yes, could it be deeper? Yes. But it's hard to expect that out of a fucking animated cartoon. With, yeah, rare exceptions. Yeah, bad in the animated series, but that's a rare exception, not the rule. But that's why I would like to have seen, okay, the 80s to this was a big jump. What's the next jump? Instead, it went backwards. Because we can't do this. Oh, this sucks now. Oh, actually, no one knows this. Because most people you say, they don't know what the fuck you're talking about. It's like you're speaking Swahili. They've never heard of this. They don't know what this is. And how would they? Anytime all these people talk about the Turtles, they never mention the show. All the big YouTubers, whenever they mention this, they don't mention the show. All these guys like James, I like James Wolfe. He rarely ever mentions the show. It's the 80s cartoon. Andre the Black Nerd, either you talk about the 2012 cartoon or Rise, or no one ever talks about this. Phaelus, he took a shit on Turtles Forever, which was part of this. No one ever talks about this show. It gets buried, it gets forgotten, and like I said, I'm fucking sick of it. I'm fucking tired of it. Even if I make the longest fucking review, this is only the first season, then I'm gonna do it. So I like that, you have a moment where Raph actually comes home and apologizes and Mikey forgives him. And then you have a nice battle between them and these punks called the Purple Dragons. And this is where Raph gets his motorcycle that Donnie built for him. And you get some nice rapport between Raph and Casey, where they're shit to each other, but they're also friends. The next episode you had Nano, about these nano machines that could be used for microscopic operations. This one scientist lady is a fucking bitch. She's like, oh, this is a personality glitch. This thing acts like a 3-year-old kid. It's personified again, and she just shocks the thing and it screams and she don't give a shit. And then it escapes, of course. Then gets with this thief who misuses him. Meanwhile, Casey meets April. And their rapport reminds me a little bit of the 1990 movie where Casey's like, Oh yeah, the shop, huh? I get it. You're waiting for a real job, so you're hiding out here in your pop's junk. And then she and then they talk shit to each other. See, and yeah, that reminded me a little bit of the 1990 movie, which I quite enjoyed. I liked how each of these episodes, it seems like the characters actually get their moments. Like in this, Raphael using his motorcycle as distraction for this big fucking thing. Donnie getting this device to drop him perhaps in this vat. Does he melt the thing? Leo. Leo is not some fucking perfect guy who does no wrong. He has faults. Later on in one of the seasons, because he got stabbed, and he's pissed off about it, he just his attitude even worse than Raph. And he goes off on its own. Now granted, it's not as epic as it could have been. But at least it's nice going in that direction. Maybe the next show, you go further, and they don't want to do that. Because it's only for kids. Because we can only talk about the 80s cartoon. Only. And I like the 80s cartoon. But there's more to it than that. There's possibilities are endless. To only focus on that, to me, you're limiting yourself. Yourself being the creative forces that are now behind these characters. And honestly, I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table by doing that too. I really do believe that. I really, truly do. I think you'd be rather surprised. Now, this next episode, I think is one of the weaker ones of the season, to be fair. Darkness on the Edge of Town. Our characters are having fun, skateboarding, skating around. There's a blackout. They're fighting the Foot once again because the Foot's trying to steal the sword. But to do certain things. This was a rather forgettable episode. Pretty much, there's a point Donnie hang glides to find these ninjas on a pier. To find some of the Foot on this boat, on the ship. This sword is powering something in the water to grab this armor that we find out Shredder wants. To me, just a fairly forgettable episode compared to the stuff before and since. Just kind of seems like filler, honestly. The Way of Invisibility. This is really one of the things about this episode. You really get the sense of with Bastard Salmon, who's now with Shredder. Each time we see him, he loses another body part. Like in this case, he's lost an eye, and he'll lose more as it goes on. Casey Jones, a bit of his personality comes out because he's an unwanted house guest. To the point even Splinter's like, Raph, just take him out for fresh air, get him out of here. And the big chunk of this episode, you have these ninjas, they have these cloaking devices. I think even Casey goes, cloaking? What are they, Klingons? I thought that was actually a pretty funny line. And by the end they're fighting these invisible ninjas. I mean, not a bad episode. I did nothing great about it, but nothing too shabby. Fallen Angel, I would say that's one of my favorite episodes this season. You introduce this girl named Angel who Casey knows. One thing leads to another. Casey gets caught by Hun, and pretty much it's this cage where they're having all these fights. So the turtles have to go undercover in these human clothes. And one of them goes, we walked to an ugly convention. And then Raph goes, hey, then you must feel right at home, Mighty. I did that sort of fun, wise-ass rapport. I guess because it was interesting to see like the turtles in regular clothes, not just the trench coats that we see other times before in the past. And having some of the Turtles fight in this ring as if it was fucking Thunderdome. Maybe not that badass, but I mean, it's still nice to see that kind of stuff. And each person, including Casey, gets their moment to shine. It's like Fallen Angel, I didn't mind. Garbage Man, one thing I took away from the episode, it was nice, I don't know why, but I thought it was nice that the Turtles would actually be friends with the homeless folk. Something about that just rang true to me. That, hey, if they're in New York and they live in the sewers, that'd be an interesting dynamic if they happen to be friends with the homeless people in New York. Oh, that just seemed nice to me. I can't really put in words. I'm like, oh yeah, I actually buy into that. And they're actually giving the homeless some supplies and such. I just, because in a weird way you don't see, I don't know if you have a lot of cartoons even reference homeless people. To say it's cartoon, oh it's too, unless it's maybe like a wino somewhere, but it's always too depressing for kids to think of, what is homeless daddy? What is homeless mommy? So I mean, it's not like a huge deal, but it's just nice that it's put into there. And homeless people are disappearing. You find out it's this person taking them to this island. Speaking of fedoras, there's a nod to that, where they're wearing fedoras and are asking this montage. Well, like this weird trumpet music playing. Again, the music I do think is one of the weakest parts of the show. But on the flip side, one of the strongest parts of the show is just the idea how the characters interact with each other. Like how Raph keeps making fun of Mighty. You know, you're just embarrassing yourself. You know that, right? Or Mighty fucked with Raph. Or how these characters interact with each other like a family. I do wish a bit more was done with this Garbage Man character, because you really don't know much about him. You really don't know anything about him. It just seems like a rather out of the blue type of villain. And, you know, the fact it's named Garbage Man is like, okay, that took like 10 seconds to do. And maybe a bit more could have been done with the fight at the end. A bit more intricate with all the turtles utilizing the way to stop this guy. Pretty much all of them going up this thing, and then Donnie does something, then the Garbage Man falls off. And if they really, a lot more teamwork would have been appreciated. It's definitely not like an episode that really stays with you. The moment I liked was the very end, where Mikey's always trying to say a one-liner, at times even doing an Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation. But then Raph says something, and Mikey's like kicked in the ground. Like, see, how do you do that? Well, quit recycling the old ones, Mikey. Look for something new. It was a very telling quote, because I'm like, yes, quit recycling the old, look for something new. But then when I say that, well, they did something new with the Michael Bay. Yeah, you're right. They did something new. So new, it fucking was news to me and you and to anyone. There was a fucking Ninja Turtle movie. It could be a fucking Battletoads movie. And you wouldn't have to change much of Jack fucking squat. But anyway, Ben, dear. Maybe that's what Michael Bay thought. He was playing Battletoads and he thought, yeah, this is aliens. Oh, no, whoops. Sorry, I was playing too much Battletoads. I was the wrong fucking thing. Maybe you should have done Sewer Sharks instead. With the fucking steroid up fucks. But anyway. They needed to, one of the better arts. No, this is a good one. We're not there yet, but this is a good one. The Shredder Strikes Part 1 and Part 2. What I liked about that one was that the Shredder, his first inclination is to trick and try to play the devil's advocate for Leonardo, saying, hey, you don't know me, and by this point Splinter has not told him who Shredder truly is. Just yeah, the Foot has fought you because we didn't know who you are, but we're fighting for a greater cause and we need your help. So it's like Shredder trying to sweet talk Leo. I thought, okay, that's actually a different tactic. Obviously, it would be a one-time thing, but it's okay, that's something at least somewhat interesting and different to try to do at the beginning. And that's a nice way for then Splinter to go, no, this is the real story about what happened. Where I was a rat and they tipped my ass out the fucking window and literally murdered my friend, my sensei, my mentor, my master right in front of me. Doesn't cut the ear off, but like the 1990 movie, but does at least some of that. And this is where you start getting a lot more of these like 2-part or 3-part stories, which is nice because that means they take a little bit of time to fully tell their story without trying to rush certain things, which is kind of nice to see in retrospect. So you did this build up, so you tell the backstory of the Shredder, Splinter. Get ready to fight in the rain. I thought it was a nice choice of having it in the rain. Gave a nice visual aesthetic to it. Then you get to part 2 where they're fighting Shredder. And then the characters get their moments. As a fan of Raphael, it's nice in the show that they really showcase Raphael as a protector. There are times where Donnie's in trouble and he's like, watch your back, Brainiac. He's like, isn't that what you're for? There are times where Raphael is either Shredder's going to hit Leo and Raph grabs it and hold it with his size, or Mikey pushes Mikey out of the way, or someone's going to hit Donnie and he kicks the bad guy away from Donnie. Again, as a fan of the characters, I like to see Raph as a protector, which is how I always viewed the character. It was also nice to even add more of a dynamic look to it. There's the roof's on fire. There's a big explosion. They all get the fuck out of there. They gotta regroup. Mikey does, I thought, one of the most fucked up things, where Raph finds him and Mikey pretends he's fucking dying. He's like, oh, I see the light. Please tell Raph he's always been a big cheesehead. Psych. I'm like, Raph's ready to beat the shit out of him. I'm like, I don't blame him. Beat the shit out of him. See, that's what I mean. If you did another show after this and you go even further, you could take a scene like that and then have a scene later on where Raph's still in the mood and Mikey's like, oh, what's the deal? Hey, man, I mean, I know it was a bad joke, but I mean, I just wasn't thinking right. Yeah, well, whatever. And then Mikey tries to do something. That's what I mean. You could go further with the characters. You go further with these stories. You could go further. And I said, okay, this is a nice step in the right direction at the 80s cartoon. The 80s cartoon was a nice genesis. We could go further. I think this did. But no, we don't do that anymore. Some people feel they did. I disagree. I vehemently disagree. And if you hear the weather, even the weather disagrees. Also, Splinter, he's able to hold his own as well. You can tell he's a character who really cares for his sons. Again, the Splinter in the 2012 cartoon that time seemed like a fucking dickhead, at least at the start of it. And here, not so. It's like he could be stern at times, but you can tell he really does care for his pupils. And he really gets on the battle, into the fight. And that was nice to see. Then you did a one-off story with Mighty, which made sense. The unconvincing Turtle Titan, because he's a fan of comic books, so he wants to be a superhero. He's like, hey, why don't we all be superheroes? And you get to see him as brothers, like Raph and Donnie, playing keep away with Mighty's comic to annoy the hell out of him for once. ultimately helps this superhero named Silver Sentry. It's a nice story for Mighty. It fits well for him being a fan of comic books. He got to do this little team up. It was it was fine for what it was. I don't find Mighty annoying like other people do. Then you have this 3-part story, Notes from the Underground, where in their new lair they found these crystals and it leads them underground. Mighty's always paranoid because he's watched the monster movies. He thinks they're walking into a monster movie, so he's always trying to find a way to get the fuck out of there. And like I said, because it's 3 parts, you actually they don't have to rush it. So you see them going down into the underground, and these monsters are trying to kill them and there's a little bit of adventure. There's even a moment where they're chased by a boulder, like it's Indiana Jones. And by the second part, they realize these monsters are actually not who they think they are, and there's something else going on. And okay, let's go further on this journey. And the third one, they find out what's truly going on. And again, there's some nice piece of animation. There's a part in the third Notes from the Underground Part 3 where some of our characters are in this vehicle that's on this rope going from A to B over this lava. The lines break. When it falls, it hits this spike, and the further it goes down, the more and more and more the spike gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So when it gets impaled, it's breaking more and more and more apart until they finally gotta get out as the whole thing's broken apart. Because the whole thing's going down. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like that piece of animation I thought was very well done. That piece of animation reminded me of something I would see in an anime. That's what I mean, like there's little moments that remind me of that, which is nice to see. I thought one of the more endearing episodes was the teen. Number one, because it's based on one of the original comic books, and it's a big old ode to Jack Kirby. It even says in honor of Jack Kirby. Of course, Jack Kirby, if you don't know that, yeah, look him up. Comic book king Jack Kirby. And pretty much the Turtles are at April's place hiding out. Donnie goes down to fix the water heater. There's this other guy there who's named Kirby, who likes to draw, and he found some crystal thing that when he draws, something comes alive. There's a portal they go through, and anything Kirby draws comes to life in this world. And at the end is nice and bittersweet. It just seemed like a very neat ode to Jack Kirby, and like I said, a lot of it feels reminiscent of that original comic book. And that is one thing, I say a lot of positives. One of the few negatives I've had with the show, I mean, to name a couple, like the Ninja Tribunal season, I wasn't really big on. Yeah, I don't know, just that story arc was not for me. There's certain times where they try to do something from the comic that did not work the best. Like there's one where, oh, I forgot what it was called now. In the comic book, the way it was written was they were going down this river and they saw these other sea creature people. And in the comic book, I guess this is why they didn't do it for the cartoon, because it would have been maybe too serious for kids. In the comic book, it was they're attacking the turtles in April on this boat, this raft they're on, and you realize that one of the reasons they're doing it is because they have this one last mate, and she dies, so there's no way to have a future. And April thinks about it, and then lets her a raft staring at her like, oh, you guys are in the same boat as them. Once you're gone, that's it. Maybe they thought that'd be a bit too too much for kids to handle. But it would be nice to see that in a future show. But what do I know? But like also there was one comic book I would love to have seen, is like this crazy comic where they're in this other world, and it's like this world there's all these cars racing, and like the humans, if a human is in there, the longer they're in, the more they get like more skeletonized and crazy, and it's like all these cars driving all over. But maybe they thought that'd be too graphic or too scary for kids. I mean, I wish they did more in those directions. But it was like some, like, the teen they were able to do. I'd be open to a show where they tried to do all the comic books. All the comic book issues. And you do, like, little alterations to develop more of the characters or stuff, but yeah, that would be nice to see. But we can't have that because that'd be we gotta be like the 80s cartoon, because we can't be anything else. Nothing else applies apparently. Then we get to one of the best of the two-parters, the Shredder Strikes Back 1 and 2. That's the one where the first part is Leo's out on a run. He's going through all these hoops and hurdles in the rain with all these bad guys coming out, leading to him being thrown through the window. When it sets up the part 2, where the Turtles are just bombarded with all these bad guys coming out of the woodwork while protecting Leo and trying to find a way to get out of there. And that, to me, is one of the best episodes of the season. It's just action-packed, non-stop. You have the elite guards that have the hats straight out of Big Trouble in Little China. It's definitely the Three Storms. Well, there's also Mystics as well in a later episode. That's a little bit of the Three Storms too. But there are times where you see people with these hats. They even go with nice hats. I'm like, there has to be a Big Trouble in Little China ode to some of this stuff. That easily has to be. And a lot of great fighting. Characters all getting their moments. I keep saying that because you'd be surprised how many times that's not the case in some of these shows, where characters just gets discarded to the point of being almost pointless and useless. Tales of Leo, that's when they've escaped and they're at Casey's grandma's farmhouse and the Turtles are telling stories while Leo is out of it. Mighty, Don, Raph. I like when Raph tells his story, he has a little bit of tear going down, and Splinter's like, he knows, my son. Your brother hears you. It's not over the top. It's not too cheesy. It's just a little tear, and Raph goes by the window, and it pulls out. Camera pulls out from the window to the house. It's nice, a little emotional moment. The Monster Hunter, that's the next episode. Again, one of the more forgettable ones. It's while they're at the farmhouse, Mikey gets seen. You have this Monster Hunter try to chase him. So him, Donnie, and Casey fuck with her, the Monster Hunter, and make a fool out of her. Meanwhile, the more important part of it is Leo getting helped by Raphael making his new swords. Like, that was what I took out of that episode. Not really like if I say like I can watch all these episodes and enjoy them, but again, if you're telling me which are some of the more weaker, forgettable episodes for one thing or another, I would say like the Monster Hunter and the Dark Side of Town, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, what was it? Darkness on the Edge of Town. Because then you get to, I would say, the best part is the Return to New York. It's a 3-parter, and to me, it's so big that in a way this should have been the end of the season. because it really ended on such a grand note that I think the next three, Lone Raph and Cub, Search for Splinter Part 2, I think you could have waited till Season 2 to do that. Because Returning to New York, I mean, they go back to the lair, they make this diversion, and they're pretty much just going level by level at the Shredder's lair. And they're fighting invisible ninjas, and Raph gets his vehicle, shooting up the whole place. When they get to Part 2, they're fighting these Shredder clones, and they have to continue up. There's this one that's a hallway of traps that they gotta get through. There's these mystics that they gotta deal with. They're fighting the elite guards. By the time you get to Part 3, Bastard Stopman, who's had enough of getting this shit cut off, made this fucking thing to fight Shredder. While they're fighting, they have to fight Stopman, and then they gotta fight Shredder, and Raph gets on this flying motorcycle thing. One of my favorite moments is when he goes Geronimo and jumps off, try to dovetail right onto Shredder to get him away from this sword that everyone wants, because this sword has a lot of power. At the end, the turtles all get their moments to shine. It fucking ends with Leo and Shredder going like this. I didn't like an anime, and when Leo lands in the forefront, in the background you see Shredder land, and his fucking head falls off. And I remember being like, oh, what the fuck, boy, when the very last part, you see Shredder get up, pick up his head, and leave. You're like, what the fuck? It was a nice question mark. Like, where did that come from? Which that's the thing that later on people did not like. They didn't like that Shredder was this, what they call an Utrom. Looks like Crane from the original cartoon. But that was stuff in the original comics, these Utroms. It's because of them you have the Ooze, which created the Turtles in the first place. I was fine with Shredder being that, because Shredder was still this intimidating villain. I always say of all the interpretations of Shredder, he was the most intimidating in this show. The way they made him look, the voice they gave him, the way he behaved, the way he was unrelenting. If I have to be fair, the 2012 cartoon comes close. To be fair. But to me, I still give it to this one as the most intimidating Shredder. That's just me. That's just my opinion. But yeah, just it didn't really bother me because it was different, but at the same time, at least they're doing something with it. It's not just thrown in there for shock value, then they do absolutely nothing with it. And to me, it still works. It still works. Because you made a Shredder that's intimidating, that knew how to fight, and was still a worthwhile foe for our heroes. Because it ends on such an epic 3-part note. I like Lone Raph and Cub because I'm a Raphael fan, and missing, he's looking for him, saves his kid against these mobsters. At one point gets blinded, and the kid's telling him like where to hit until he regains his sight. That's a fun episode. The kid wasn't too annoying, the kid named Tyler. Then the last 2-parter is Search for Splinter. And it's okay, the Search for Splinter. It's more where I like the way the Search for Splinter Part 1 opens, where they're looking for Splinter and Raph is chasing this guy while he's on a motorcycle. He fucking gets his motorcycle, goes out of a second-story window, lands on the guy's hood, fucks up his car with his size on the hood of the fucker's car. It's like, you like to steal shit? Well, no, you steal stuff that's not from you. You know. Let him go, Raph. Okay, fine. Well, I thought that was a badass moment. But see, what you find out is that there's this place called TCRI, which is like the canister that had the ooze that created them. And they said, okay, maybe they know where Splinter's at, so it's them breaking into it. Then when they break into it, they realize these people are not people, they're really aliens, and they see what they look like. Another fun bit is Casey's a diversion. Just the front of TCR is almost like this, I don't know if I want to call it a bank, but TC's like returning something, and being like a bad customer. It's like, sir, see, I'm returning it here. But sir, this is RICT. Yeah, this what it is. It's a TCRA. Wait, sir, this is RICT and it was written in crayon. It doesn't matter. He's put his baseball bat, just being the worst customer ever. Like, that was funny. And the second part, again, just how the whole place is a maze and they're trying to figure out where to go. It's just for the ending of a season, it just doesn't nearly have the, you leaving it on a high note, like the Return to New York 3-parter. Because really it's a setup for the next season. Just by the end they get zapped, and you find out in season 2 they've been zapped to somewhere on another planet. Because then there's a 3, 4, 5-part arc, Turtles in Space. Which again, that was part of the original comics. Where you introduce this robot named the Fugitoid and these Triceratop looking alien, which I always thought that was a neat design. And it just felt more, here's something to lead into season 2 instead of end it on a great note. And like I said, truthfully, you could have just put these 3 episodes to season 2. I don't mind the episode, but I'm just saying, in retrospect, 23 episodes is fine as well. Just these 3 seasons, I don't know. It's not a big deal now if you just watch them, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I love the show. I love the first season. I would say the best seasons are the first 4 seasons. Ninja Tribunal was disappointing. A lot of people don't like Fast Forward. I don't mind Fast Forward. It's not nearly as good as the first 4 seasons. There's a decline in animation. It just doesn't look nearly as good as the first 4 seasons. I don't know if they just was not having as much money, as much budget, because when you watch the Fast Forward seasons, or season I should say, it just, the color's not as crisp. It's more becoming a little bit goofier show. But I guess the whole being in the future setting just appealed to me. Plus I like these characters as the Turtles. At least I like these voice actors. So even in the lesser times, I'm still enjoying it for what it is. Back to the Sewer. I would say I liked it more than Ninja Tribunal. I'd be alone in that. It still wasn't up to up the snuff of the first 4 seasons, but it was okay. Back to the Sewer. That was okay. But I guess they kind of knew they were on their last. They're getting up there because the final episode is April and Casey having a wedding, and it seemed like that could have been the end of the show. And then they did Turtles Forever, which was the even better ending for the show. But yeah, I love this show. He also asked me, Lucas, my top 10 favorite cartoon. My top 10 favorite episodes. I said it's hard for me to do that for the entire show. I said, is it okay if I do that for just the season? He's like, that's okay. So I would say my top 10, going from 1 to 10, would be Return to New York Part 3, Because that was just the ending, cutting the Shredder's head off, even though he walks off. It was just a great image, and like I said, tons of action, coming with all this battles with Stockman and the Shredder and on the rooftop, and Raph doing the Geronimo moment, like all this really cool stuff happening. It's very exciting, it's very fun, very action-packed. Then the Shredder Strikes Part 2. Again, when all the turtles are together protecting Leo, and they're coming out of the woodwork, all the turtles kicking ass of the Foot Clan or the Elite Guards, or Casey making his entrance where he gets his motorcycle, runs right through the window of the shop, fucking up Foot Ninjas with his motorcycle. Like, exhilarating moments, satisfying moments of that nature helped. Then Return to New York Part 2, again, when they're going their journey up this sort of skyscraper that Shredder has. Number 4 would be Meet Casey Jones, featuring one of the moments that I think could be absolutely important to anything Raphael related in the future. That's a big moment. Raphael picked up something and almost killing his baby brother. You could run with that in so many different directions. But they're never going to, because it's only for kids, and that's it. Just Nickelodeon now. But yeah, again, to me, that's a strong moment, especially for my favorite character. And then Casey Jones, meeting him, I thought they got the look and the voice, fits it very well. Number 5, Things Changed, the first episode. Again, when I first saw that way back when it debuted in 2003, watching on the VHS tape, I went, oh shit. And I remember at the time I was working at Target, and I was a stalker, and I was always waiting when they come on DVD, I would fucking pick it up. And they would actually have them at Target. And it's like, oh fuck, there's only 3 episodes, but I really like this show. Pick it up. Just there was no other things. Just at the time there wasn't even really I don't even think Blu-ray was even a thing on that time. So who knew? I don't think Blu-ray was a thing. Maybe it was. I don't know. Been so long. Then it would be Fallen Angel, because I like the whole Leo and Raph are in this cage fighting these bad guys, and Hun I don't mind as a villainous character. He's this big, almost wrestler looking guy who works for Shredder. And is some of the levity humor in that, them having to wear these human type clothes. I just, that episode went at a good pace for me. Then Attack of the Mousers, where you get more introduction of April O'Neil, and the fact that, again, being different from the 80s cartoon and even the movies, she's not a reporter in this. She was an apprentice. She was working with Baxter Stockman, like she was in the original comics, so it was nice that they brought that into it. Then Lone Raph and Cub. Again, being a Raphael fan, I'm a sucker for that. Interested to see him be able to fight while blind. And again, the kid, I don't think was too irritating in that. Return to New York Part 1. Like I said, I would say that's the best multi-part story in the first season. And then I put the teen because I thought the ending was rather nice but bittersweet, and like I said, it's a nice tip to Jack Kirby. So again, Return to New York Part 3, The Shredder Strikes Back Part 2, Return to New York Part 2, Meet Casey Jones, Things Change, Fallen Angel, Attack of the Mousers, Lone Raph and Cub, Return to New York Part 1, and The King. And not Elvis. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm a big fan, as I've said in probably Like, no shit. You've been talking about this for an hour. Well, you know what? It deserves it because, like I said, I'm tired of the show getting neglected. I'm tired of the show being forgotten. I'm tired of the show getting the short end of the fuck stick. And I'm not saying this is a 10 out of 10 perfect show. Not only the music, like I said, some of the seasons are as good as others. As a cartoon, yeah, there are times I would like for it to take even more serious and follow up more certain parts of the story. But at the back of my head, it's like I still have to gather the fact that this is still a cartoon. So there's only certain things they're gonna do. But I like when there's moments where they try to push that. I appreciate that. When I first saw this, one of the things I appreciated the most, when they try to push some of these little emotional moments or these little more serious or even more violent moments. I appreciated that. There's a moment in one of the later seasons where Splinter is fighting, I want to say it's Bishop, which is like this. Imagine Hugo Weaving in the Matrix. That's what Agent Bishop is, look-wise. There's a point where I want to say it was him or something else. Splinter hits him, and you see a shadow where the body hits a fucking chain with a hook, and is hanging there. Like, holy motherfucker! The motherfucker just got impaled. Or there's a nightmare scene in one of the later seasons where each of these turtles are having these nightmares because this thing's overcoming them. And Leo's nightmare is Splinter's trying to attack him, and the sword is thrusted up, and it goes right through Splinter, and you see this, that's where the sword went. And then Raph's nightmare is he's fighting the Shredder and knocks the helmet off, and it's Raph's face. Almost like a Luke Skywalker Empire Strikes Back moment. Oh, there was no Yoda tell him to go in the fucking cave. Like I said, it's nice when they try to do stuff like that. Like, ooh, shit, I didn't see that coming. They don't do that all the time. It's still a kid's cartoon. It'd be nice to see a show that did do that a lot more. But again, we can't have that evolution. We're not allowed. And I think that's a mistake. I do think there's an audience for that. I don't think I'm alone. Because I hear a lot of people say it, but then no one ever wants to talk about this. I will. So thank you once again, Lucas. Thank you guys for watching. Take care. And we will see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Watch out for him. Something that evil always comes back.
Now see? That worked! How do you come up with those?
Quit recycling the old ones, Mikey. Keep looking for something new.